Aside from having great importance in nature, forests also represent inestimable value in terms of landscape and tourism. One of the largest threats endangering them are fires. Unfortunately, distraction, the underestimation of the potential dangers of those who start fires in order to clear vegetation from dry land, or worse still, the voluntary act of man, all lead to reducing to ashes thousands of hectares of land every year. The Molise region has been actively engaged for years in the defense of the territory from the dangers of forest fires, and is a partner in the Cross-Border Adriatic Cooperation Project, IPA, funded by the European Union, called Holistic, which aims to reduce natural hazards by providing guidelines and correct procedures in forests when faced with forest fires, and guidelines and correct procedures with regards to protecting historic buildings from earthquakes. Prevention, information, monitoring, and individual behavior correction are the main points of the strategic project, which sees the Molise region collaborate with other Italian regions and other countries including Slovenia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, and Greece. Thanks to a spirit of collaboration and the opportunity of exchanging information with regards to the different experiences encountered and good practice techniques used, it was possible to provide new and more effective tools of fire protection for both the Molise region and other project partners. The huge commitment of efforts made by the Molise region have confirmed the consideration that only a global approach combining sustainable forest management, organization of services, and fire recovery of land damaged by fire can bring about concrete results. The project also covers the techniques of fire prevention, correct behavior to be adopted against fires in protected areas, and the restoration of burned areas. The most appropriate approach to fighting forest fires is through promoting and increasing the activities of forecasting and prevention, instead of promoting the emergency phase, which is usually associated to the extinguishing of fire. The operational management of fuel is intended to reduce fires from spreading vertically, and this is usually caused by the obstruction of an abundance of deadwood shrubs found in the lower areas of trees. These operations allow us to increase our behavioral understanding of how fires operate, thereby limiting the intensity and the length of the flames, and hence enabling faster operations control, but above all diminishing the possibility of a small fire spreading and becoming hazardous, resulting in a particularly complex situation, which is both dangerous and difficult to control. These measures are all included in the guidelines and practices of forestry measures of prevention. The activities of safeguarding and protecting environmental resources, in particular forestry, cultural and historic areas, are of fundamental importance to the region of Molise and its commitment to fight forest fires. By abandoning the necessary cultivation of woods, or even by failing to safeguard its cultivation, both facilitate the starting of fires as well as the spread of fires. Hence lies the importance of multi-year regional forecast planning methods through eventual prevention and fighting procedures against forest fires, that in addition to identifying areas of regional land on the basis of hazard and risk of fire, also identify areas where actions of safeguarding, cultivation and prevention are most needed. Thinning methods and more generally crop care play a key role in increasing the resistance of woods to fire. The first method regards the elimination of dead arboreal drums and those destined to dry out due to their excessive density, with a consequent reduction of fuel potential and a reduction in the quantity of energy that it emits. The disposal of this material determines a greater resistance to its inflammability and less likelihood of facilitating the spread of fire. Reduction has been the most effective method of trimming inflammable biomass, since it is precisely on the bushes that fires lower their intensity, even in the case of fierce fires where sometimes the flames reach the top of the trees. This method is successful if intervention occurs when the bushes are the major cause of propagation. The reduction of biomass must take into consideration the type of fire in order for the intended purpose of the plan to be effective. Fundamental for preventional uses are the so-called fireproof strips, which are strips of land kept clear of vegetation or planted with suitable plant species. Where conditions permit, the connection of more neighboring groups allow for curtains or fireproof curtains to be built, which greatly increase conditions of resistance to the passage of forest fires. Stronger resistance may also be attributed to the forest as a result of the increasing humidity of the bedding. All biomass deriving from forestry safeguarding practices can be used to produce heat and/or power. In the Strategic Cross-Border Cooperation Project, the region of Molise has offered its cooperation and expertise in coordinating the management of a sustainable forest and the use of biomasses for the production of electricity. In Molise, a wood chip boiler built by the forestry and located in the MAB reserve of Collemeluccio, Monte di Mezzo, represents a concrete model of sustainable forest management, an example of industry recovery and efficient use of energy from biomass forestry safeguarding and prevention of forest fires practices. The chip boiler was produced using a customized machine called a wood chipper. The amount of wood chips produced depends on many factors, and first and foremost are the dimensions of the chippings and their timber. The more powerful the chipping and the largest single piece to be chipped, then greater will be the productivity per hour. In biomass production, the quality of wood chips is one of the key issues and is determined by the fiber content, the distribution of particle size, and the water content. The size of the type of wood chips condition the burning capacity of the system and the way it can be stored. In particular, the presence of oversized particles can affect the use in small and medium-sized power plants. The dimensions of the flakes depend on many factors, and more precisely on the raw material of chipping used, on the condition of the knives, and possibly even on the use of special refining equipment. Good quality is reached when most chips fall into the medium-sized category, and when the content of powder and branches are reduced to a minimum or are completely inexistent. Storing facilities are fundamental. Material must be stored in well-ventilated areas in order to prevent humidity, which can compromise the quality. The main use of wood chips for burning in the boiler are for the production of hot water and heating. The fight against forest fires. Preventative actions adopted by the Molise region in their fight against forest fires include identification, surveillance, sightings and signaling alarms using both ground and air surveillance methods. Assessment is made paying particular attention to priority objectives to defend periods in which the danger is more elevated, with light aircrafts and through on-the-ground teams who are properly equipped. Surveillance activities are carried out via systems of fixed monitor array and spy network observation posts, and are distributed around the territory in special needs or high-risk areas. System watches and the monitoring of forest fires are intended to identify outbreaks promptly, in order to allow for controlled and distance monitoring at the first outbreak of flames and the eventual extinguishing operations. In view of its importance, the region has implemented their own system of video surveillance. The alarm consists of the activation of the operating structure of fire prevention and is controlled from the permanently based operations room. In reliance with the regional plan, the territory is scattered with interwind teams who will extinguish fires from ground level, and these teams are formed of specialized employees. A specific map shows priority defense areas and the single territorial areas pertaining to each team, and each territory is manned by an operations coordinator. In case of fire, the first to intervene are the ground teams, coordinated by the region and composed of regional personnel or of personnel from the National Forestry Corps, National Body of Firefighters, the Armed Forces, the National Police Force, and the volunteers of the Forest Fire Prevention Association. Special equipment is used to put out fires, as well as specific techniques to stop the burning process through the removal of oxygen or the lowering of the temperature. If the fire is in the initial stages, teams work directly on the fire by extinguishing it with appropriate tools, covering it with soil, spraying it with water or chemicals, fighting agents or retardants. If the fire is extensive, a row of prevention vegetation is distributed in front of the fire, perhaps in the vicinity of a natural barrier, in order to reduce the intensity of the flames and to be able to act more effectively with a direct attack. If the fire is too extended and groundwork teams are insufficient, the person who is manning operations can ask for the intervention of aircrafts supplied to the region. The responsibility of all fire prevention activities is the permanently based operations room service for civil protection, which includes the overall management of fire extinguishing matters and which works 24/7. Personnel are expected to work in 24-hour shifts and must be qualified in information and computer management, archiving and processing data on forest fires. The passage of fire has negative effects on both flora and fauna. Ash that spreads during a fire renders the soil less permeable to water, and with outbreaks of strong rainfall, the surface flow increases considerably. Following high-intensity fires, it may be necessary to cut or skid burnt or seriously damaged trees, and the possible recovery of forest cover. Where possible, it's best to leave nature to follow its course, and intervention is limited to measures aimed at promoting the settlement of a natural forest. However, when the wood provides a protective cover function directly adjacent to towns and communication paths, costly technical intervention may be required to replace protective function, which the natural woods provided before the passage of the fire. In order to avoid the majority of forest fires, it is sufficient to follow some elementary precautions and a few but important rules. Woods do not burn by themselves. Disattention and imprudent behavior by man can result in serious consequences. Suffice to think that the majority of fires in our country are caused by incorrect behavior, which is both intentional and unintentional. The lighting of fires in the woods for personal needs is permitted only during non-risk periods and following the precautionary measures provided by forestry regulations, and are limited to heating needs or for cooking food supplies. In case of fire, the following precautions must be respected. Use cleared areas isolated from inflammable material and away from heaps of dry vegetation. Adopt precautionary methods in order to prevent the spread of fire and sparks over areas of wild or planted vegetation in connection with the combustibility and particularly windy weather conditions. Observe a constant supervision of the fire until it has been put out. In fully equipped areas, do not light any other fires other than those relating to barbecue facilities, grills, and fixed structures which are present in the same areas. All we need do is respect some simple and efficient behavioral rules. Do not light bonfires and fires in the woods during excursions, and make use only of the facilities in equipped areas. In the woods, do not park cars in dry grassy areas, as the heat from exhaust pipes could set off a fire. Do not leave litter on the ground, as it is easily inflammable, but place the litter in the dustbins provided. During the hot summer months, do not burn stubble, straw, or other plant residue in an uncontrolled environment. Agricultural and forestry work where fires are necessary should be lit under strict supervision and far from bush areas, having previously informed local command stations of the National Forestry Corps. Should you see a fire, do not get close to the flames, but call the telephone number 1515, which is the number of the National Forestry Corps, or call 115, which is the number of the fire brigade, or any relevant contacts that the region provides assistance with in case of fire. Look for a secure escape route, a road or a waterway. Do not stop in areas where the direction of the wind is blowing. Lay on the ground in an area where there is no inflammable vegetation, as smoke tends to rise. Thereby it's possible to avoid breathing in the smoke. The fire is not a show, so do not stand along the roads, as you would be a hindrance to the emergency services vehicles and any communications necessary to manage the emergency.